So how does Fairfields lawyers facilitate this process for someone who wishes to migrate to Australia? Why would they come to you?
So our theme or principle is we deliver results. So result, the outcome is the most important things for our clients. Firstly, you need to get the right advice, correct legal advice. So the law is very complex. If you look at the migration regulation, that's in a program called the Legend, and that's the program, the law published by the Department of Home Affairs and the Australian government. It has the Migration Act, regulations, gazette notices, and the policy. And if you look at the pages, been using that program for the last 25 years, over 25 years, I would say it's over 120,000 pages. So very complex. So we really need to know where to look at the law if you want to help someone. So we are a law firm and we have a responsibility to deliver outcomes, deliver right advice to our clients. What we can do is we can do the correct advice and do our best to get the outcome.
Australia had an election recently and the Labor government was re-elected. What is their stance on immigration and visa requirements? Elections were held in Australia recently and the Labor government was re-elected. What implications will this have on visa requirements and immigration policies? To find out more about this topic, today in this conversation is Don Susantha Katugampala, a leading immigration lawyer. Now, he's the founder and principal lawyer of Fairfields Lawyers, which is an immigration firm in Australia. Now, to answer all of these questions, he will join me in this conversation. Welcome.
Alanki.
Ivan. So as we begin this conversation, my first question to you is, Australia had an election recently and the Labor government was re-elected. What is their stance on immigration and visa requirements?
In the election in 2025, Labor had an excellent mandate. So winning that mandate, Labor Party has not used immigration as a policy to win the Australian votes. The immigration numbers or the quotas or restricting immigration has never been discussed or promoted by the Labor Party, which was a very good news. And yet they won the election and they achieved an excellent majority in the parliament. And therefore, we can assume that the Labor government will continue to support immigration. So it's a good news that the newly re-elected Labor government will continue to attract and support immigrants to Australia. That's an excellent news.
So does this mean that you assume that there will be a continuation of the same policies pertaining to visa requirements and immigration policies?
Absolutely, yes. Especially they had a policy in the last 3 years, because they were elected in May 2022 and 2022-25. The policy that was in effect in the last 3 years probably will be refined to achieve better outcomes in the next 3 to 4 years. This government will be another 3 to 4 years. And when you're re-elected as a government, you probably can perform better because then you have more experience to perform. That's important for Australia. So we are expecting some excellent outcomes in immigration and also Australian economy. The interest rate is coming down. So the Australian economic outlook looks better.
So when we speak about employment opportunities and career options, which categories of people have more opportunities to migrate?
I think Australia needs lots of people in the construction industry. Because both parties agreed that there's a housing crisis in the country, shortage in the country, and need to build new housing, new infrastructure. Because Australia is a developing country, developed but still developing country, and lots of infrastructure is being built, lots of highways, tunnels, freeways, roads being built. And therefore, most of the people in the construction industry locally are diverted to that sector. And they get paid well. And therefore, the Australians choose to work in that sector than working in the building construction industry. Therefore, if Australia wants to build new housing, Australia needs to bring the skills.
Sure.
That there is construction project managers, construction engineers, civil engineering, draftsmen, technicians, quantity surveys, and so forth. That's in demand. And health sector is always in demand because Australia has an aging population. An aging population requires nurses, doctors, aged care support workers, and so forth. And also the mental health is a priority for Australian government. Therefore, the social work, psychologists, all that is in demand and priority for Australia. And generally, engineers are a priority. And in the bigger picture, in the medium to long run, we think that IT sectors, especially in the computer software engineering and software development areas, will have a big opportunity in Australia because IT is vital as we go to the future. So the opportunities are unlimited for those sectors. So every applicant in that sector should look at securing their migration to Australia if they wish to migrate to Australia. But at the same time, there are other skills in hospitality or automotive or mechanical engineering or marketing, sales, management, accounting, finance, all that is available, but not in demand. If you have the patience to wait for your opportunity in a particular state or an employer in Australia, then you can certainly secure your migration, even if your occupation is not in demand.
What happens in the event someone wants to start their own business in Australia? Is this a possibility?
Absolutely. We had a business and investor migration program. That business and investor migration program was suspended in October 2022. For some reason, the previous Labor government decided to suspend the business migration program, given that those business migrants who obtain their visas successfully have not performed enough to benefit the Australian economy. The idea was to benefit the economy, create new opportunities, to benefit the Australian economy, and bring new capital to the country.
So there's certain criteria you need to fulfill.
That you need to satisfy to get your visa.
Sure.
And also subsequent to get your visa, you need to satisfy certain criteria. But once you get your visa, even if you've done the minimal, then you get to stay, you get your PR. So Australia has been very generous in giving permanent residence to business migrants. Now it is suspended. There are thousands of applications pending, but we are lobbying to the government to reopen and continue with these applications, and that's our job, not just to present a visa application to the government. We continue to have a dialogue with the stakeholders, the governments, the state governments, and the federal government to continue a very good migration policy, not just individually as a lawyer, as a law society, law councils, and Migration Institute. We do that collectively. And we think that the investor migration program should be reopened in a new shape. But in the event that it's not available now, people can still apply for investor migration under National Innovation Visa, NIV. That's the new visa that's been introduced in December 2024.
And I suppose this also allows Sri Lankan businesses to diversify into the Australian market.
Absolutely. So that visa, the NIV, is available for exceptional business talented people. If you're a high caliber businessman, then you can get your PR, direct permanent residency. But if you are in a medium scale, then you can expand your company to Australia. You can establish a company in Australia. That company can sponsor yourself if you got the right skills. You can still obtain a business visa, live and reside in Australia, and work towards your PR, permanent residency, and passports eventually. So although the conventional pathways are Restricted, there are unconventional pathways where you can obtain your PR, your residence under business migration.
And there are many categories of visa. What does our audience need to know about this? Because I'm sure many have questions as to how to apply and how to get the process going.
Yeah. When you look at the migration, the biggest area for migration is the skill migration program. Australia has two types of skill migration program. Number one is the applicant-driven skill migration program, where the applicant can apply. If you've got high skills, you need to have a skill assessment, higher level of English, higher points, under 45 years of age. And then you are looking for a state nomination or a sponsorship from a state territory government. And you can obtain your PR under subclass 190. That's the first subclass. And if you're very highly skilled and your occupation is in demand, you might get independent skill migration invitation under subclass 189. Or if you wish to settle in a regional area, then you can obtain a visa called subclass 491. Those visas are available for skilled people, but that's the visa category that is driven by the applicant. The applicant can drive that process. If you're an applicant, want to apply, you can choose these visa options, and you need to do your preliminary stuff to get your skill assessment done, English test done. You're going to get your documents in order, and then you get right advice, and you can be in the process. The second category of the skill migration is the employer-sponsored migration program. So this government is giving priority to that. And that means an Australian employer can select and choose the applicant that they wish to sponsor. And that is employer-driven migration program. That's the priority for the government. And there are different type of visas. And one subclass 482 used to be called TSS, Temporary Skill Shortage Visa. Now they changed the name to Skill in Demand Visa. It's a new category that was introduced in December 2024. And then you can also apply for direct permanent residence visa under subclass 186 if your occupation is on the core skills occupation list, and should you have the skill assessment and the right English and under 45 years of age, you can apply for direct permanent residency under 186 visa. Also, if your employer is in a regional area and that's gazetted in the law, then there's a visa option called subclass 494, that is priority, but a wider visa option, wider occupation opportunities. Also that if your age is over 45 years of age, that means you cannot traditionally meet the employer-sponsored or general skill migration requirements, you can apply under DAMA. DAMA is a Designated Area Migration Agreement Scheme. So basically, the government has approved certain areas for DAMA. That's a priority, and the government is looking at expanding the DAMA areas, the DAMA agreement in this new term. That's been confirmed by the government. We see that employer-sponsored migration will be a priority in the next 3 years.
All right. So how does Fairfields lawyers facilitate this process for someone who wishes to migrate to Australia? Why would they come to you?
So why people come to Fairfields lawyers is that we deliver results. So our theme, our principle is we deliver results. So result, the outcome is the most important things for our clients. So we give the priority to getting the final outcome for our clients. That's why people come to us. To get the result, firstly, you need to get the right advice, correct legal advice. So the law is very complex. If you look at the migration regulation, that's in a program called the Legend, and that's the program, the law published by the Department of Home Affairs and the Australian government. It has the Migration Act, regulations, gazette notices, and the policy. And if you look at the pages, been using that program for the last 25 years, over 25 years, I would say it's over 120,000 pages. So very complex. So we really need to know where to look at the law if you want to help someone. So we do not advise by looking at the website of the government, what's available in the public domain. So looking at the law, looking at the regulation, looking at the legislation is vital for us. So we are a law firm and we have a responsibility to deliver outcomes, deliver right advice to our clients. What we can do is we can do the correct advice and do our best to get the outcome. But the outcome is always depend on the applicant's presentation, whether the applicant is eligible to qualify for certain visa.
And I think you highlighted the key points which they take into consideration during the visa process.
Absolutely. And if you apply from overseas, offshore applicants won't have the appeal rights. So unfortunately, you need to have the patience to get your visa, but you still need to invest and get your skill assessment done. That's not with the Australian government, but the Australian government approved skill assessing bodies need to approve your documents, your qualifications, your work experience need to be assessed and acceptable by the Australian government. You need to pass the English test. It could be IELTS test or PTE. So you can choose which test to be set and then qualified to apply for your visa. So once you qualify with those preliminary requirements, then you can lodge a EOI, expression of interest, to the Department of Home Affairs, and you can lodge an ROI, registration of interest, to the state or territory government. Then you will be chosen by the state government. So that is something, I would say, very competitive. It's a global program, whether you are in Australia or Sri Lanka or Dubai or Ireland or Dublin or London, you can be selected, depending on your points. So there's no discrimination. They don't have quotas for each country. So basically, it's all demand and supply driven program, globally available if you apply for this general skill migration program. But at the same time, if you make your application in Australia, that means you lodge an application while you have a valid visa in Australia, then you get something called bridging visa. The bridging visa will allow you to stay in Australia, and most of the times, more often, you can work as well. You get permission to work. And in certain circumstances, you get your Medicare facility as a temporary Medicare card. And you can basically stay and work and live in Australia until your visa is decided. In case you got a problem with your visa, then you have appeal rights. So that's only available for onshore applicants. So as a law firm, we do act for the clients in the preliminary stage, doing their skill assessment, doing the preliminary advice, preparation of the applicants offshore, and also onshore, dealing with the employer, meeting all the employer requirements, getting the sponsorships done, the nominations done, and the state nominations done, and also lodging the visa application. In case your visa application is rejected, refused, we take that to the appeal. It used to be called Administrative Appeals Tribunal, AAT. We have done thousands of appeals in that area for our clients and also primarily for the clients of the other agents who come with the refusal, because sometimes applicants miss the opportunity, but sometimes we can correct that mistake error in an appeal.
Sure.
And if you appeal now to the Administrative Review Tribunal, that's called ART now, then you can hear your case, you can present your case. If you fail at the appeal, then you can also go to courts. There are courts available, and the federal court system is available for judicial review. And then if you fail in all those circumstances, stages, then you can appeal to the minister. This minister has the discretion to give a final say or final call on someone's visa. That's on public interest. But we don't write letters to the minister unless you have an exceptionally justifiable case. So our track record is we deliver results, we drive for success, we don't drop you, we don't drop our clients. If someone stick to us, and we always stand by you.
And you take them through the entire process.
We do. And we are very competent that we had the best confidence to deal with the Australian government, federal government, state governments, assessing bodies, the employers, any certifying bodies, and the tribunals and the courts. We have that capacity and the resources, and the other lawyers, the barristers also who can help in court matters. We have that access, the capacity. So we have a very good track record of success over 25 years. That's why people come to us.
So you've been doing this for 25 years. And
Over 25 years. We celebrated 25 years in 2024.
All right.
With Mr. Scott Morrison in Sri Lanka, former Prime Minister of Australia.
I do remember. But when you say you facilitate the visa process for anyone who wishes to migrate to Australia, does this include students as well who wish to pursue their higher education?
We're not student agents. We don't do student visas offshore, generally.
But mostly for career and
we do
employment
professional
opportunities.
migration or investor migration or employer-sponsored migration. But we do act for students when they come to Australia, because the student agents, most student agents are not licensed migration agents, so they need a migration agent or lawyer's advice.
Sure.
So you go to a lawyer and a specialist lawyer to get the best advice. We do that. And we help the students to get their PR, permanent residence in Australia. And therefore, most of the students wish to stay in Australia, but some students have returned to their home country. They've done so well, and we help people after even 10, 20 years being in their home country, they want to re-migrate to Australia. And at the same time, we do promote those clients and those migrants who secure their migration in Australia to support back Sri Lanka. That's always in the heart.
Yes, I think you did mention that in our previous conversation as well, about how Sri Lankans leaving Sri Lanka for employment in other countries actually support Sri Lanka back in terms of foreign remittances. And I think that's very important for Sri Lanka given the economic crisis we faced. So having been in Australia, having lived in Australia for so long, and with all the experience you had, why do you think someone should migrate to Australia if they have doubts?
I think that if you're a Sri Lankan, Sri Lanka is your best country. Sri Lanka is home. And Sri Lanka has lots of future, subject to how we secure that future. And we're yet to see that. We hope that people will be rewarded for that mandate, and to secure the best future for them in Sri Lanka, in your home country, in your homeland. This is a beautiful country. But if you look at elsewhere other than Sri Lanka, Australia is the best place. Australia and Sri Lanka got direct flights, 9.5 to 10 hours. You can come from Melbourne to Colombo. They're direct flights. And the connection, the culture, the similarities, the opportunity between the two countries is amazing. So I would say that compared to many other countries, the Western countries, some people want to go to US or Canada, is too far and too long to recover when you travel. But I travel between Sri Lanka and Australia, Melbourne and Colombo, very frequently. I think that you don't need a lot of time to recover in that travel. And it's a very seamless connection that we have between the two countries. And Sri Lanka and Australia both being Commonwealth countries. We share similar laws. We share sports of cricket, and a lot of things in common. In Australia, if you want to live as a Sri Lankan, you can live as a Sri Lankan. You can do your work.
So you can keep your
Australian
identity.
community as an
Yes.
Australian, but you can spend your weekend as a Sri Lankan. But I always encourage the Sri Lankan Australians, especially my clients, to assimilate and perform as an Australian, because if you want to do well, you got to deal with that mainstream. That's what we do. We need to drive, towards some outcome, and very important that you assimilate. And while you admire, appreciate, value your culture. So that's an example for Sri Lanka as well, I guess.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the highest number of Sri Lankans who live out of Sri Lanka live in Australia.
Yes, I do say so. The Middle East probably has a bigger number, but that's not a permanent destination. It's not a permanent migration place, Middle East. You go for work.
Knowing that you have always had the best interest for Sri Lanka in your heart, And having lived in Australia for so long and having worked there, what has your experience been like in Australia?
My experience is that if you do the right thing, if you're honest, if you're sincere, if you're competent in what you're doing, you can always achieve your goals. You will never be discriminated. So I've never had a problem. I work in Australian law firms. My first job was with a law firm called Knox and Hargrave, established in 1838 in Adelaide. After I graduated from Monash University in Melbourne, I went to Adelaide, to South Australia. My first job, for family reasons, I had to relocate in Adelaide. And I worked with all the Australian lawyers. I had the Prime Minister at the time in our boardroom, and Mr. John Harvard, then, whom I met again recently. And, so there's no discrimination. It's how you present yourself. So the opportunity is there. So I would say that Australia is a great place. If you look at the market, the opportunity in Australia, Sri Lankans are highly respected. And most of the Australians and the other migrants from other nations in Australia, the Chinese, the Malaysians, Thai, they think that the Sri Lankan migrants are very bright. Sri Lanka produces the best doctors, best engineers, best lawyers.
I think we do. I'm being biased, but I think we do.
I think we have an excellent talent, and there's no short of talent in this country. What we're going to do is to capitalize that talent for future growth and the prosperity of this country.
All right. Finally, what would your message be to our audience watching? If anyone is interested to migrate to Australia, what would your message be to them?
I would say that migration law is a very complex area of law. The migration laws and policies are ever changing, is always changing. And Australian government will always continue to attract migrants. So the migration program will not be stopped. So you will see the light in the future. The new financial year will commence on 1 July, and July 1st to 30th of June is the financial year. When the new financial year commences, the new quotas will be released and issued, allocated for states. The opportunities will recommence in July, August. And so if you want to secure your migration, you get the best advice. And right advice, best advice, and then you drive for the outcome, and you can secure migration. And if you are in Australia, you've got a problem with your visa, again, you need the best advice. You can appeal and win your case. So it's all depending on the advice that you take, and sometimes your outcome will be decided. But if you get your right advice from the beginning in your journey, then you probably get a very smooth outcome. But if you had bad advice in the beginning, very difficult to repair and fix that bad advice in the latter part. So always be mindful, always be selective, do the right thing, and then you get the right outcome. If you're a Sri Lankan, I have a message that you secure your migration for your family, your personal benefit, and it's important. Everyone looking for a better place, maybe better income, better lifestyle,
Better
security,
way of life.
all that for future. But never forget Sri Lanka. Your support is needed for Sri Lanka. So when Sri Lanka was in trouble, crisis, tsunami, we always supported back Sri Lanka. We always encouraged Sri Lanka to go and support Sri Lanka. And we have not changed that message, and will continue to do so. So therefore, please support Sri Lanka, even you migrate to Australia. That's my message.
That's a wonderful message. And thank you so much for this conversation. I think you gave a lot of information and shed a lot of light on this topic, because I think given the situation Sri Lanka faced, there were many who wanted to leave Sri Lanka because they were struggling, and they were struggling to make ends meet. So I think you've given a lot of advice. If you're keen to migrate to Australia, you can always get advice from Fairfields lawyers. And thank you very much for this conversation. That was Susantha Katugampala, a leading immigration lawyer. I hope you got all the information you needed. Thank you for watching. I'll be back with a new episode. Until then, stay safe and take care.